Hello and welcome back to another Monday Aristotle stream. I made it on time. I really didn't think I was going to make this stream today at this time because I've had an absolutely terrible time. I went to bed at 1 a.m. and I didn't fall asleep. It's now 2 p.m. and I have not yet fallen asleep. I don't know if I've slept or not. I honestly don't know. You know, if you lay in bed and you close your eyes for 12 hours, does that count as sleep? I really don't know. But we're gonna venture to read some Aristotle. I did catch up on the reading from last time. We had a tough time understanding it last time. I can't remember the reason why. I think I was just not very focused last time. But we did. I have caught up and reread it, and it was just more. It was just sort of more. He was just sort of going over the other sort of philosophers of his day and criticizing their views on metaphysics. So if it's more of the same of that, we'll be all right. But let me move all the camera stuff into place here and see if we can get set up. Let's have a look. See if we've got it all right. Let's see. And cam. Here we go. Yeah, you should see my red carpet. Okie dokie. Let's see how. I'm looking pretty bright. I'm probably gonna have to close the thing a little. But how are we looking for brightness? Oh, blimey! It is like the sun is in the room with us right now. One memento. My headphones. That's a bit better. Yes. Hello, Noshako. Welcome. You have found a sleep-deprived son today, who through sleep-deprived is attempting to read Aristotle. I haven't slept at all. I went to bed at 1 a.m. today or yesterday, and then I didn't fall asleep, and it's now 2 p.m. So that it hasn't worked out at all. However, on the plus side, we do have some more bourbon biscuits. So we will survive on biscuits. Oh, we need the pen. Where is it? I can never seem to find it. It's I'm not sure what it is actually. I'm not sure. They're like custard creams but chocolate. That's what they are. In fact, we can find out. What does the packaging say? It's a bunch of chemicals. Chocolate flavoured filling. Interesting. No idea what it's made of. Just a load of chemicals, really. I haven't found the pen yet. Where is it? Where is it? I always lose. There it is on my table. Shiny pointer. Okay, okie dokie. Let's go to where we was. Now, last time, before we got cut off with a phone call, I believe that we were somewhere around here, and I think we may have reached the the end of the bit, but I'm not 100% sure. So I'll sort of start reading somewhere around here. I'll read here. Actually, that's a good idea. Alright, I'm actually going to make my OBS a bit bigger so I can see it clearly. Okie dokie. Oh, also, I do want to... that didn't work. I've dropped it. Oh, I've lost it again. It's fallen underneath the book. There it is. I'm going to move my headphone wire if I can reach it. Got it. I'm going to plug it into my mic. There we go. So I can hear myself. Alright, all set up. Let's figure out how to tackle this book. I'm hoping I can manage at least an hour through the sleep deprivation. If we make 2, that'll be a miracle. Let's just sort of see how we go. Okie dokie. Let's start. Where was we going to start? Was going to start a little higher, was we? I think we was. So, actually, what we can do is we can actually go back to the contents page and sort of have a sneak peek, which is still not very far away. But here's where we are. We've this is the top part here. You can't see a bit further up, but we're up to somewhere around here. We're up to here, where he's sort of he's spoken. It's introductory. I think almost up till book 4. I think so. It's going to be a lot of introductory stuff. But yeah, he's just sort of been criticizing the pre-Platonics and the Platonic philosophers, and it looks like what we're going to read today is probably going to be his criticism of the doctrine of ideas. That's the theory of forms, the whole Plato forms thing. And the history of philosophy reveals no other causes than the four. And then I suppose that's going to introduce his own ideas. Yeah, he's a bit of a hater. But that's what I expect we're gonna hear about today. There. Let's see. And so we're going to start right here, because I think that's where we got to last time. Let's just sort of have a go. And a reminder, I have had basically no sleep. It's not my own fault. I think I may be genuinely insomniac. Insomniatic? Is that the right word? I don't know. But let's see. Oh, it's not so. To be frank, if you can be in. That was the custard cream. You can be an insomniac, but what is an insomniac? Like, an insomniac is insomniac-ic? I don't know. I'll drink some water after that. I'm seeing stars after that. Oh, I've completely ruined the delivery of it now, but I had a funny joke as I was winding up this stream. I thought I was going to say, if I was a celestial body, there would be no Pythagoreans, because my revolutions are totally irregular and not harmonious. That for whose sake actions and changes and movements take place, they assert. Who is they? Who are we speaking of here? The Platonists? I think we're speaking of. Well, I was speaking of the Platonists or the Pythagoreans. They assert to be a cause in a way. I need to zoom in a bit further. It's all a bit blurry. They assert to be a cause in a way, but not in this way. Not in the way in which it is its nature to be a cause. Like insomnolent, insomniac. I don't know if it's spelled right. I feel like these are the same words. Somnolent. If you're somnolent, I'm guessing that means you fall asleep. And if you're a somniac, it means you fall asleep. And so to put in at the both the start of these, you don't fall asleep and you don't fall asleep. I don't know. I'm too tired to figure it out. For those who speak of reason or friendship, class these causes as goods, They do not speak, however, as if anything that exists either existed or came into being for the sake of these, but as if movements started from these, in the same way those who say the one, or the existent, is the good, say that it is the cause or substance, but not that substance either is or comes to be for the sake of this. Therefore it turns out that in a sense they both say and do not say that the good is a cause, for they do not call it a cause qua good, but only incidentally. Rare, I think I should probably follow Aiko again, because he doesn't tweet anymore. He's completely abandoned his Twitter. I'm a big fan of, like, the art he commissions. He's got a very cute character. He's got several characters, but he never posts them. I think you're friends with Aiko. You should peer pressure him into using his Twitter again and posting all of the good art that he commissions, because otherwise I have really no idea where to find any of it. He moved to Blue Sky, did he? I'll have to go dig for that then. All these thinkers then, as they cannot pitch on another cause, seem to testify that we have determined rightly both how many and of what sort the causes are. Besides this, it is plain that when the causes are being looked for, either all four must be sought thus, or they must be sought in one of these four ways. Let us next discuss the possible difficulties with regard to the way in which each of these thinkers has spoken, and with regard to his situation relatively to the first principles. And now we're on to new business. Those, then, who say the universe is one, and posit one kind of thing as matter, and as corporeal matter, which has spatial magnitude, evidently go astray in many ways, for they posit the elements of bodies only, not of incorporeal things, though there are also incorporeal things. Incorporeal things. I see he's criticising these people for ignoring the existence of incorporeal things. I ignore the existence of incorporeal things. It's so over for me. And in trying to state the causes of generation and destruction, if I can get there. I can't reach it. 1 moment. I think we've got it. I think we have it. The causes of generation and destruction, and in giving a physical account of all things, they do away with the cause of movements. Further, they err in not positing the substance, i.e. the essence, as the cause of anything, and besides this, in lightly calling any of the simple bodies except Earth, the first principle, without inquiring how they are produced out of one another. I mean fire, water, earth, and air. For some things are produced out of each other by combination, others by separation. We did read this, bugger! I thought we was on new territory here, but we are rereading what we read before. I have no idea where we got to last time in that case. Others by separation. And this makes the greatest difference. In fact, you know what? Where's my phone? We shall not tempt fate. I'm just going to turn my phone off. There we go. Can't phone me if the phone's turned off. Nothing shall stop us now. Nothing. It makes the greatest difference to their priority and posteriority. Priority, not in the sense we know it, but as in prior, not priority. You know what I mean. For one, in a way, the property of being most elementary of all would seem to belong to the first thing from which they are produced by combination. And this property would belong to the most fine-grained and subtle of bodies. For this reason, those who make fire the principle would be the most in agreement with this argument. I think we're on the same page, but maybe the other column? Yeah, I think we must surely have been on the other column. I can see over here they're mentioning Empedocles and Anaxagoras. I think that those got name dropped last time as well. We'll certainly get further. unless I get so super tired that I fall asleep without even turning off the stream. What a tragedy that would be. For this reason, and they would be disagreeing with this. All right, last time was the one with the cool. Yeah. I got disrupted by a call somewhere, and it was somewhere midway through the sentence, and it will not happen again. I've turned my phone off this time. But each of the other thinkers agrees that the element of corporeal things is of this sort. At least, none of those who named one element claimed that Earth was the element. Yeah, we definitely read this part. Evidently, because of the coarseness of its grain. Of the other three elements, Earth has found some judge on its side, for some maintain that fire, others that water, and others that air is the element. Yet why, after all, do they not name Earth also, as most men do? For people say all things are Earth, and Hesiod said that Earth was first produced of corporeal things. So primitive and popular has the opinion been. According to this argument, then, no one would be right who either says the first principle is any of the elements other than fire, or supposes it to be denser than air but rarer than water. But 2. If that which is later in generation is prior in nature, and that which is concocted and compounded is later in generation, the contrary of what we have been saying must be true. Water must be prior to air and earth to water. So much, then, for those who posit one cause, such as we have mentioned. But the same is true if one supposes more of these, as Empedocles says. Dude, imagine their reaction if they... Yeah, I think... And, I've basically ranted about this before. The discovery of the periodic table is basically... They could have done it, I think. They lacked some of the materials. They couldn't really isolate elements too well. But that's because they weren't looking for it. They were looking only in their head. They weren't looking at the ground beneath them. There's a guy on YouTube I follow who does like a history of chemistry videos, and he's gone over the history of the periodic table, and pretty much the way it worked is to the ancients they had the 4 elements, and then as you go through the medieval period, they identify a few really quite distinct chemicals that are kind of that you can kind of stick them on their own, and they and they have all these sort of fancy alchemical names for them, and they become like the elements we have today. But what stopped them from making the periodic table is that they really just didn't have enough of them. They only had a tiny handful. There's not enough that you can start noticing patterns. And how do you find more elements? Well, you just look for them. You look for them. You look and you see differences. That's the whole of empiricism. To simply inquire about things in everything, no matter what it is, no matter how simple it seems. If you look into it, its depth is endless. You can spend a lifetime. You could spend a lifetime studying these chocolate biscuits that I've got and finding infinite depth within them. There was no end to anything, and they didn't understand this. They had this sort of arrogance that many things were beneath the philosophers. They were not worth their time. Even Socrates himself, the man who inquires in everything, he paid no attention to the physical realm. He thought there was no wisdom to be found in it, and so he ignored it. And he learned nothing from it, and neither did any of these philosophers who took after them. They ignored it all. They even, and then including also, looking up at the sky. They looked up at the sky and they saw that there were celestial objects in the sky, but then they stopped looking at the sky, and instead they started looking in their own heads, and they started thinking, well, if there are celestial objects in the sky, they must obviously be perfect. And perfect things come in groups of 10, because that is a perfect number, and so there must be 10 celestial objects. Yes, that makes perfect sense. And they never actually looked up at the sky ever again and never noticed that actually there are not 10 celestial objects. And then all the other stuff that goes along with that. That's the biggest flaw. If they had just been humble enough to to look for things and have a methodology is what I mean. A methodology to inquire that leads to discovery. If they had that, I think we could have had the Industrial Revolution 2,000 years ago. But the same is true if one supposes more of these. As Empedocles says, the matter of things is four bodies. For he, too, is confronted by consequences, some of which are the same as have been mentioned, while others are peculiar to him. For we see, if I can go a bit lower, oops, I bumped the camera. For we see these bodies produced from one another, which implies that the same body does not always remain fire or earth. We've spoken about this in our works on nature, and was on the heavens. And regarding the cause of movement and the question whether we must posit one or two. Oh, also, I did read that, yeah, so what the hell do you mean, water is two guys? I did read that. I need to get in the habit of actually reading things to acknowledge that they've been read. Like a walkie-talkie, I read you over. And it's the way of the. Oh, I'm a bit too close now. I've got a bit blurry. I kind of wish this whole camera was not on a flexible thing, but was on sliders. That way they didn't have quite so much bounce. Right, we're just gonna go angle until we get there. And regarding the cause of movements and the question whether we must posit one or two, he must be thought to have spoken neither correctly nor altogether plausibly. And in general, change of quality is necessarily done away with. For those who speak thus, for, on their views, cold will not come down from hot, nor hot from cold. For if it did, there would be something that accepted the contraries themselves, and there would be some one entity that became fire and water, which Empedocles denies. No, I won't. I'm not saying that. The robots they can't control me. You know what? Here's my controversial take about all these sorts of things, whether it's Alexa or any kind of like voice activated AI thing or whatever. It doesn't, not even AI, but just the voice actor when you communicate with the computer by calling its name. I don't like it solely because the name they pick is always lame. It's always Alexa or Cortana or whatever sort of thing like that. You know what they need to call it? They need to call it computer. And like in Star Trek, they're like computer. What did Aristotle mean by this? And then I want the computer to respond in a very computer robotic way. I don't want it to pretend to be a human. I don't want it to be like, oh yes, darling, this here, blah 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 blah. I want it to be like it can't use like contractions. It can't talk like a human. It can't use any slang. It has to talk in a very robotic way. And and when it gives me any kind of number, if I say how long will it take me to get to the shop if I start walking now and I walk 5 miles an hour or something, I don't want it to say it'll take you about half an hour. No, I want it to say it'll say one stop will take precisely 32 minutes 11 seconds and 3.415 milliseconds or something. Like I want it to be unnecessarily precise. So it sounds more robotic and like that's that you want to win me over to getting an Alexa thing or whatever it is. What was the other one? No, I think it was Alexa. That's what you've got to do. That's what you've got to do. I've got to make me feel like I'm in Star Trek. As regards Anaxagoras, I forgot what Anaxagoras does. He's not as famous as Empedocles. As regards Anaxagoras, if one were to suppose that he said there were two elements, the supposition would accord thoroughly with an argument which Anaxagoras himself did not state articulately, but which he must have accepted if anyone had led him on to it. True to say that in the beginning all things were mixed is absurd both on other grounds, and because it follows that there must have existed before in an unmixed form. And because nature does not allow any chance thing to be mixed with any chance thing, and also because on this view, modifications and accidents could be separated from substances, for the same things which are mixed can be separated. Yet if one were to follow him up, piecing together what he means, he would perhaps be seen to be somewhat modern in his views, modern by ancient Greek standards. For when nothing was separated out, evidently nothing could be truly asserted of the substance that then existed. Nature does not allow any chance thing. Yeah, it's sort of... You see what I mean? There's this, like, arrogance. There's this conviction that the universe is perfect in the way that humans expect it to be perfect. That it's, it's really... It's an anthropocentric view of the universe. That's what it is. It's like, take air, for example. Take the atmosphere around us. We can pretty accurately divide between where it is breathable and where it is not breathable. Using phrases such as habitable and inhospitable. Hospitable and inhospitable. And we view these almost like that these are laws of nature. Like, this place is hospitable and this place is inhospitable. So this place is good and that place is bad. But really, the only difference here is that one happens to have a high quantity of a certain mixture of gas, and the other one does not. And it really makes no difference. In fact, it could be any gas. I think Venus or something has like an atmosphere of like sulfur or something. It's inhospitable to us, but it too has a fairly random assortment of gas in its atmosphere. But we think it's in some way imperfect or something because we personally can't breathe it. Well, what if life had evolved to breathe in the atmosphere of Venus? Then they would look at Earth and they would say, life cannot be sustained on Earth. You see how nonsense it is? And you can apply this with everything. We look at the things like the Mars and stuff, and we say it's a dead planet, and the Greeks would almost, if you could show the planets to the Greeks, they would probably say that there's something wrong with Mars. Maybe there's something wrong with Earth because Earth is not like Mars. Maybe Mars is the perfect one. You see what I mean? They have this very human-centered view of the universe, and they assume that the universe is made to suit our beliefs of what should be the way things are. But really, we have simply adapted to a particular arrangement of nature, and it suits us because we have adapted to it. We have evolved to it. We may well be evolved. We could have evolved to different circumstances. Why do we even need a sun? And we see it as just like as bringer of life and light, and you couldn't conceive of a universe without the sun. Why? It brings light, but what do we need light for? What do we need to see the things for? What do we need to interpret this visible light spectrum? Is it necessary? We can't interpret other other light spectrums. It's yeah. I sort of, as I said that, I thought, we can imagine a world without the sun. But they couldn't conceive of this idea, and this really carries on for thousands of years. It gets to the point, there's what's it called, then they start believing that the sun, the Earth is at the center of the solar system. The what do they call it? Would they have a name for it? It's not heliocentric. That's what we have today. It's before heliocentric. It's like Earth-centric, Terra-centric, Mundo-centric. I don't know, some word, but meaningful. The Earth is at the center of the universe, and they just assume. There's no rule. Well, okay. There's a funny joke. I forget who makes it, but they say, well, how do you know? How do you know that the sun goes around the Earth and not the Earth around the sun, and vice versa? How do you know it's one way? And they say, well, what would it look like if it was the other way? And the answer is actually it would kind of look almost identical. It wouldn't really look much different. It does kind of look like the sun goes around the Earth. Geocentric, that's it. Geocentric. Geo, I mean, like Gaia. That is the one. When nothing was separated, nothing can truly be sort of. Blah, blah, blah. I mean, it was. Oh, okay. We'll start. Yet, if one were to follow him up, piecing together what he means, he would perhaps be seen to be somewhat modern in his views, for when nothing was separated out, evidently nothing could be truly asserted of the substance that then existed. I mean, that it was neither white nor black, nor grey nor any other colour, but of necessity colourless. For if it had been coloured, it would have had one of these colours. And similarly, by the same argument, it was flavourless, nor had it any similar attributes, for it could not be either of any quality or of any size, nor could it be of any definite kind of thing. For if it were, one of the particular forms would have belonged to it, and this is impossible, since all were mixed together, for the particular form would necessarily have already been separated out. But he says all were mixed except reason, and this alone was unmixed and pure. From this it follows, then, that he must say the principles are the one, for this is simple and unmixed, and the other, which is of such a nature as we suppose the indefinite to be before it is defined and partakes of some form. Oh, I always remember because of geography. Yes. You know, although you spend so much time with Ramnor, I expect you've learned most of Greek by now and are very familiar with these words. You can perhaps almost understand him when somebody redeems the Greek redeem. In fact, speaking of Greek, so I've been playing the Roblox Nuclear Reactor Simulator game. And I went to the Discord channel, the community Discord channel of this Roblox game, for this nuclear reactor simulator on Roblox. And there's a guy in there who has studied ancient Greek for like 6 years. I just can't win. I mean, I'm kind of happy. Maybe I'll talk to him. I don't know. I make sure he's like older than 10 years old, but like. Yeah, what the hell, man? Like, how does this keep happening to me? You know, I remember once I got a job. Okay, so another hobby I've got that I really should put more time into is sewing. You know, I've made like, you know, dress shirts and dress trousers, you know, for like suits and stuff. That sort of thing. Sewing. And that's like, come on, like no one does that. That's like not even women do that anymore. That's like super niche hobby, okay? Anyway, I get this job at a retail store. Like I'm putting cans of beans on the shelves, okay? This is just a retail job, you know. And so, you know, so I'm like, okay, I'm safe here. I'm the coolest guy around. I have hobbies that people don't have. And then one day, a new employee appears. And she's like a professional cosplay maker. Well, it was just professional. She won't be working retail, I suppose. But, you know, she makes like cosplay. She can do like sewing and stuff. And it's like, I'm not cool anymore. I've been one-upped. Oh. There's always that you versus yeah, exactly. Like I had to you know, like it's like oh, there's always someone who's better than you. It's who is this person? You know, if you follow this train of logic, what's the end? There's going to be some guy at the end of this chain. He's like, no, there's no one better than me. What are you talking about? I'm the best. It's so unfair. Ugh. You know, I mean, like, yeah, it's totally like a selfish thing because, you know, I should be happy. It's like, oh, someone here shared an interest in you. That's cool, right? And they're better at it than you, so you really have something to talk about. Like, there's nothing more boring. There's nothing more boring than being good at something, and you find someone who's into it, and they're really not good at it. They're so beginner that it's like, I don't really have anything to talk to you about. Come back in like 5 years. Come on now. You're not ready yet. You know. But I don't know. You know, there is one area which I want this to actually happen. So you know, I've ranted about comics before. You know, I rant about comics all the time. And there's like a you could like a school of art, like a scholar, like a way of doing things. There's a way of doing things, and I'm going to call this the manga school of comics. There's a way that they make comics in manga that is very different from Western comics. They have this way of making them. They have these sort of these these methods and these ideas and these philosophies behind making these kinds of comics. They're called the manga school of comics. And I hate using the word manga because it's Japanese, and really, I don't think this needs to belong to Japan. I think what makes manga good, better than comics, is simply because they're both comics, but they're just good. They're just good, and everything else is terrible. But anyway, the point is, I think eventually people in the West are going to realise it. They're going to figure it out. They're going to start looking at like the Western comics they're making, and they're going to compare them to the manga, and they'll be like, hang on a minute. Okay, forget the big eyes. Forget the big eyes and the pointy chins. That's not important. Well, that's just a stylistic choice. Look at the other things. Look at things like one thing they do is the paneling. Okay, the paneling. The what's it called? They're arranged in rows, and the gaps between the boxes are not. They're not the same. They're not the same. You have a panel here, and then a panel here, and the gap between them is really narrow. But then the panels underneath it, the gutter here will be a wide panel. And what this does is it makes it so that you look from this panel to this panel, and then this panel and this panel, or right to left. It doesn't really matter. But the point is, you don't go from this panel to this panel to that panel to that panel, unless you reverse it and you make it so that the gap here is wider than the gap here, and this is really narrow. Then you read that to that. Think of like a four coma. You've read four comas, right? The four panel comas, and they're often arranged in columns. And they go down. So why don't you go from here to here? Because there's a big gap between them. It's obvious which way you read them in. And the Western comics, they don't understand this. They don't get this at all. They have their gutters always the same size, and sometimes they're arranged in these window panes, and it's not clear which way you're supposed to read it. By convention, you read left to right, but sometimes you don't read left to right, and it's not communicated. And there's a million other things, and these things don't belong to manga. Manga doing it, that's just a good idea. Adjusting the space of your what's it called, your gutters. Like even here, how do I know that when I get here, water must be, why don't I read water must be together? Why don't I read that? Because there's a gap. The gap from here to here is bigger than the gap from here to here, like that. It's obvious which way you read. That's a good idea. It's not something, oh no, you can't do that because that's Japanese and now you're a weeb. Everyone should be doing it like this because it's sane, it's sensible, it's a good idea. But how did I get onto this? Why am I talking about it? How did I stop ranting about comics? I don't know. It just happens. Therefore, the other, which is of such a nature as we suppose the indefinite to be before it is defined and partakes of some form. Therefore, while expressing himself neither rightly nor clearly, wow, okay, Aristotle, he's just coming out. Look at this, dude. It's just the focus. Therefore, while expressing himself neither rightly nor clearly, he means something like what the later thinkers say, and what is now more clearly seen to be the case. I think it started. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I remember now. And I didn't finish my thought. So, what I really want to happen is I want people, who make art and maybe make comics and stuff. I want them to not just be inspired by manga, but I want them to take the right lessons from manga and apply them to comics and make comics good again, make comics great again, and then you can have a like have you considered the medium of comics, how powerful the medium of comics is? And when I say comics, I mean comics, manga, the notion of having panels and you're selling a story through images. It's so powerful. One person, sorry to be sexist, one person with a pen and paper in their bedroom in their free time can create almost a cinematic experience. You can create a Hollywood movie, just pen and paper. The experience is close enough. And given how easy it is compared to, if you want to make like a Hollywood movie, you need to make sets, you need to hire actors, you need all this expensive camera equipment, you need editing, you need all these things. It costs millions. But to make a comic, you just need a pen and paper. Or, the only thing it costs is your time and your effort. There is no capital cost at all. And it can be done by one person, and it can do, speak of like special effects and stuff. If you're making a Hollywood movie and you want a giant alien spaceship fly into your scene and destroy the Earth, that costs a fortune in special effects. But on a pen and paper, you can just draw it. I think you know, Sharkawale. I saw you in your stream. You were drawing a plane crashing, and there were velociraptors, and one of them was wearing a dinner suit, and I think there was something else in there as well. I think there was a car. And you can just draw that. How that would cost a fortune in special effects to make in a Hollywood movie. You got to go get the guys in the Jurassic Park dinosaur suits, and you got to go crash a plane, and you got to get your explosives expert, and if you screw it up, you're gonna go buy another plane and go hire more dinosaurs, but you can just draw it. And if you draw it in the right way, and this is also where comics really fail at. I think there is something, if you draw it like you draw it in a way where it feels like it's alive, where it feels like it moves, that it's a moment. It's a moment in time that you can almost see it move. It's like when you see like a screenshot in an anime or a cartoon, and it's a frame, and looking at that frame, it's almost begging to move. Have you seen the new Bazinga spin-off with the AI trailer? I have no idea what that is. No clue. That sounds terrible. What is it? They even put a text saying, "Please watch this." My goodness, that sounds atrocious. What do you mean Bazinga spin-off? What the hell is Bazinga? Is that a spin-off of The Big Bang Theory? I didn't even... a spin-off of a spin-off? Where this is terrible. But what I was saying is... What was I saying? Oh... when I look at comics, I see they're not, for how unpopular comics are. They're basically underground. They can't even keep their own stores open. You could put out a stack of comics for free, and no one would take them because they're just a hassle. It's like a spin-off of a spin-off of The Big Bang Theory. I think it's a spin-off of Young Sheldon. What the hell is Young Sheldon? Is that a spin-off of The Big Bang Theory as well? My goodness. I didn't even know it was that popular. That's terrible. That's atrocious. But we consider just, you can create with just a pen and paper on your own. You can create a Hollywood movie. Oversimplification, but basically you can. Think of all. You don't even have to be a weeb. But think of the anime you like. And while of course they're impressive as anime adaptations, they're not that much different from the manga source material. I recently finished reading Full Metal Alchemist, and it's basically the same as the anime. The experience is basically the same. I can feel the movement. It feels like it has the same movement. You feel the attitude of the characters. I can even imagine a sense of a soundtrack behind it. It lacks color, but that's a small thing. But it feels animated. When you read the manga, it feels animated because they use a lot of clever tricks. They use all the speed lines, and the panel shapes and sizes are very particular, and the cinematography, it really conveys a sense of movement. I felt that comic artists don't have much freedom because they're superiors. I think they're just idiots. You can say, oh well, they're pressured in this way, pressured. I think it's bigger than that. I think there is this cultural rejection of comics as a medium that it is not worth. That there's nothing to be found in it. But imagine take like 2 or 3 of the most famous manga artists. Take Akira Toriyama. Take the guy who made Akira, Kazuhiro Otomo. I don't know. Take the guy who made Naruto. Pick some of these people, and just dump them in the West. Delete all the history of what they've made, their comic, and just dump them in the West. And what would they make? I think many of them would still make the same thing. It'd be a little bit different, but that's petty. Those are small details, minutiae. I think they would make the same thing because they've got it in them. They've got it in them. They've got this idea. They've got this conviction that this can be done. That I've got this story in mind, and what I have to do to create this story is I have to draw it on paper, and I know how to do it. You don't need these editors. The editors did not make Akira Toriyama. I think I've heard these stories like, they said go make it a battle manga, go add cell, but these are minutiae. These are minutiae. Without Akira Toriyama, you don't have Dragon Ball. It doesn't exist. The editors just push him around a little bit. Well, see, no, that's the thing. That's the thing. Why are we putting? Have you heard of No, actually, it's a meaningless reference. But why are we putting superheroes in these tight suits? What's the point of it? This, back in the 1940s, the idea of if you imagine what's someone who's really strong and is somewhat acrobatic. Well, it's an acrobat. It's a circus acrobat. How does a circus acrobat dress? Well, he has the spandex on. He's got the underwear on the outside. He's got the silly boots. He's got or he probably even has a cape. That's a superhero in the 1940s. They think, how do we we need some World War II propaganda. What do? We make Captain America, and he's got an American flag on him and a big A on his head. It's very simple. That it's very simple. There's this is in the 1940s. What do you expect? But as time goes on, look at what happened. Look what happened to Hollywood. Okay, in the 1950s or so, Hollywood is kind of primitive. They're making movies and stuff, but it's not what it becomes. And as they go on to like the 70s and the 80s and the 90s, what becomes cool changes completely. You start getting these characters like Arnold Schwarzenegger coming, and they're not wearing spandex. The Terminator isn't dressed like a superhero. The Terminator, he wears a leather jacket, sunglasses. He's got a shotgun. Totally different. You think of Rambo. He's got this Vietnam look. He's got this ammo belt and all this kind of stuff. He's not wearing. He doesn't have a hidden identity. He's not fighting crime. But he's cool as hell. And then you go further, and then you get think of the Matrix, think of Neo. He's got this trench coat. He's also got sunglasses, and and it's this look, and it's like this is cool. And the only way they can make this is because they have this freedom of thought, this freedom of creativity to think what's cool. And comics don't have this. They think, I need to make a character, put him in a colourful spandex. What are they doing? And I see this all the time. I see, they... In my opinion, the only superhero that works by modern-day sensibilities is Batman. He's the only one. Because there's a justification for why he dresses in the spandex, and it's the whole Dark Knight thing, where he's turned himself into a monster. He's creating this illusion of this monster to the criminals, that it's not a human that's after them. It's just this mythological horror that is, and that works. That's like, he's got the theming of it. It works. It doesn't, however, explain all the other criminals. It doesn't explain why there's a clown and why there's a penguin, and it doesn't explain any of that. And then the other superheroes also make no sense. I really hate Superman. And well, frankly, I hate most superheroes because who the hell cares about justice? You care. When was the last time you watched think of like a cop movie, a policeman movie? When was the last one? When was the last time anyone cared about a policeman movie in which the policeman, who's the main character, was a good guy? No one would watch that. Everyone wants to watch the guy who's, he's the bad cop. He breaks the rules. He's unjust. He's on a quest for vengeance. The whole sort of, think of the sort of the cowboy sort of movies, and no one wants to watch a goody two shoes. Who cares about justice? Generally, the villains have better designs because they don't have the tight jumpsuit rule. Some of them do. Most of them have broken away from their classic designs. Here's the most outrageous thing ever. Here's just the unbelievably terrible thing ever. Why are superheroes coloured the way they are? Why do they have their colours? Why does Wolverine wear a blue and yellow jumpsuit? Why do they have these colours? The reason is because of the printing costs. The cheapest colours to print, back in the day were, I forget the list of colours, but it's an extremely limited set of colours. And so they made all their characters that, and they made the heroes. They gave the heroes the cool colours. They gave the heroes the blue, the yellow, the red. The American flag colours. They gave them the popular colours. But then they want the villains to look different from the heroes. But they haven't got many colours left. They think, oh, what colours do we have left? You know what colours they have left? They have purple and green. They have purple and green. And so that is why the Green Goblin is purple and green. That's why, what's the guy, Mysterio is purple and green. That's why, what are other characters? That's why they're all purple and green. The villains are all purple and green in classic comics. And many of those designs have largely been abandoned, but they're still kind of there. And they've been abandoned because they're stupid. The Joker is also purple and green. He has the purple coat and he's got green hair. It's madness. Absolute madness. They did have some half tones, but they were kind of limited. They did have some, but they. You know what manga did? They just didn't use color at all. They just didn't use. The color looked terrible, so they didn't even bother with it. It was cheaper to go black and white, and it looked better to be black and white. And when they do use color, it's only for like the first 3 pages. They do the color pages, and they only do 3 pages, and they're in full color. And then when they print the color, that way, consider, I could show you a color on screen. Imagine this, Rei Ayanami. I've never said that word out loud, but Rei Ayanami from Evangelion, her blue. Rei Ayanami blue. You know it. It's a very specific shade of blue. It's not a particularly weird shade of blue. It's just a shade of blue. But it's a very specific shade of blue. And you couldn't... If you picked the wrong blue, she would look like a totally different character. That's the power of having full colour. You can pick actual specific colours and say that character is that colour. Or you do it with VTubers. Some VTubers have a very particular colour to their hair or their clothes or whatever, and that is their colour. You could reduce them down to a few pixels, and there was a trend a few years ago, of having like low pixel VTubers, and you can recognise it just by those iconic colours. But but you don't get that with the superheroes. There's no Superman blue. It's just blue. There's no Spider-Man red. It's just red. It's terrible. It's terrible. Oh. You can see I could rant about comics. One of these days, just to get out of my system, I'm gonna do like an 8-hour stream, and I'm just gonna ramble on about everything I hate about comics for 8 hours straight. And I could do that. I could absolutely do that. But I'm so torn. So on one hand, I'm totally right. I'm convinced I'm totally right about pretty much every argument I make about comics. I can see, I'm kind of cheating. Because I see manga. Manga makes billions, and everyone loves manga. No one buys comics. No one likes comics. What's the difference between them? They're both just comics, right? One is good and the other is bad. And I'm not even talking about the cape shit. I'm talking about any comics. They're all terrible. I think have you heard of Transmetropolitan? I think it's called. It's miserable. It's bloody miserable. I don't want to read that. Or what's that one with the Viking and the Roman guy, Asterix? I don't care about it. It looks like a newspaper strip. It's boomer rubbish. I want to read manga. Where's manga? Give me like Naruto. Give me like Yu-Gi-Oh. Give me something. Give me something cool. Where's the comic equivalent of Attack on Titan or any kind of anime or manga you like? Where's Full Metal Alchemist? Because they could make this. They could literally, dude. I don't know. Comics would be so much better if they only use black and white, because they'd have to learn how to do good values. They would learn how to do good values. However, I will disagree here. A lot of people say, they should just go black and white, be cheaper. I don't think they need to. I think that manga was originally in black and white for purely cost-cutting reasons. It was quicker to make, and it was cheaper to print. And I don't think this argument is really. I don't think that's really necessary today. The difference between print, ink, and colour and print, ink, and black and white is not really that much. it's a lot cheaper today than it was in the past. And with digital, it's a lot easier to make stuff in colour. Still takes a longer time. It still costs more, but for what it adds, for example, anime's in colour. We have anime in colour. Should we put anime in black and white because that would be cheaper and quicker to make? No, of course not. It's better if it's in colour. Or imagine, think of like Hollywood movies and good TV shows and stuff that make great use of colour. Imagine Breaking Bad without colour. You would lose so much. There's so much you can do with colour, so long as you do it right, of course. And to say, well, they'll do it rubbish, that's not an argument. Do it. You either do it right or you don't do it at all. But it'd help them to focus more on the scene rather than the quality of the picture. I think the focus needs to be on the scene. This is one thing I haven't quite figured out. Now, a lot of people will quickly jump to say, well, manga is made by one person, it's an author. It's like they do the writing, they do the art, and the assistants just do minor tasks. So we should make comics like that as well, because there's more clear direction. And I do agree, but this is a very challenging thing. It's very challenging to both be a writer and an artist all at the same time. There is a strength to having a team, because you can actually make stuff quicker if you can make a good product. Again, let's look at movies. Movies are not made by one person. Movies have a team, because you need a lot of teams. They have yes, they have assistants. But what do those assistants do? Do they draw the main character? Do they come up with the story? They don't do any of these things. What do they come up with on their own? Virtually nothing. The manga author, the person actually making it, they will write. They will draw the main character, and they'll write in the background. They'll say, add background characters here, draw background here. Draw these details, fill in halftones. These are trivial tasks. They just take time. They're just tedious tasks that the author could have done themselves. The manga assistants are purely assistant. They are not co-creating it. Oh yeah, it helps them learn a lot. It's a good learn. A lot of pro manga artists they get into the scene by first being an assistant, and you can often see the difference between a manga artist who has never been an assistant and one who has. You'll see that they'll be very good at making. If they've been an assistant before, they'll be very good at making straight lines, and they'll know sort of tricks to draw backgrounds and stuff like that. And whereas the ones who have never been an assistant, they've always got the wonky lines and that sort of thing. Or they're not very good with the halftones, but it's sort of, I think if the assistants provided any meaningful contribution to the manga in terms of actually it coming into being and not just filling in the colours, they would be credited. But because they're just doing tedious work, I don't think they need to be credited. They're not contributing anything meaningful. They're just doing what the author could have done, but just quicker. They're the manual labourer. You don't credit the manual labourer to a building. You credit the architect. So you have a flow of manga artists, Twitch clip that learning from manga artists, and it's a nice loop. So you have a flow of manga artists. Fuck! It better not have done that. I'm gonna go check. I have no idea if I even have the thing on my channel or not. We'll find out tomorrow when I go to check. He should got me. He should got me. You have abused my sleep deprivation to make me say things. Oh my god. But yeah, it is. It's a good loop. And this is what industry is all a part of. That you have this cycle. And again, comics don't have this. They don't have this. They only want the celebrities, and then the celebrities don't even make the comics, and they just make the covers. And I've only got one monitor, and 90% of it's filled up with my OBS, and I haven't got the Twitch integration thing on the OBS, so it's all. I'll find out much later. I can't see any of my Twitch notification stuff. But okay. To finish this thought, I think that there's a lot that needs to be done, but it needs to be done intelligently. The West is a different culture. It has different circumstances. The environment is different, both the market for it and the state of the industry, the state of the people who you can employ. The artists and the writers, they're in different places. We can't right now just copy the manga industry. It won't work. It won't work. Manga is more than just an industry. It's more than just an industry in Japan. It's a culture. It's a culture. You would be surprised at the amount of artists, the amount of famous manga artists in Japan who, at like the age of 5, were making manga. Like, just for fun. They weren't making money off it. They were just doing it for fun, like you doodle as a kid. But they were making manga. They were making panels. They were doing the speed lines and speech bubbles. How many people in the West who are artists do you know who were making comics at like 5? They did, yeah, they may have been drawing at 5, but they weren't making comics. They weren't making with speed lines and actual coherence. It's more than just an industry in Japan. It's part of the culture. Consider Comic and stuff like that. It's huge. It's huge. These people, and many of them aren't even really making any money off of it. They're just doing it for fun. It's fun. It's just people just be a comic artist. In Japan, but in the West, you don't do it. You don't do it. No one makes comics in the West. To make a comic, it's this huge undertaking. You have to be a comic artist, and no one's a comic artist, and it's totally different. It's totally different, and I think that needs to change. People need to just start making it for fun, and at like the age of 5. Until you've got 5-year-olds making comics for fun, it's gonna be it's an upward battle. There's a lot that needs to be done culturally before you can even get to the point of an industry. And I don't think we have an industry in the West. Marvel and DC are not publishers. They're producers. They don't. You can't go to Marvel and DC with your idea. There's no. You could pick up. They're not going to pick up the phone. Speaking of, after learning how to write some kanji, I can definitely see how it may help. Yeah, I think that's part of it too. I think that's part of it too. How it can help with drawing, because it's artistic. Also in Japan, doing calligraphy and to an extent also some amount of like drawing is like a traditional hobby. It's like a very high class, old fashioned traditional hobby. You do calligraphy and a bit of drawing as well with the brush. That's not a thing in the West. Not a thing in the West. You don't draw. Drawing is like super low class. The posh people did not draw. They'd play the piano and stuff like that. They wouldn't draw. But in like Japan, and I guess also probably other like China as well. So it's like doing like calligraphy and being kind of artistic was accepted. But these fingers, after all, at home only an argument. Wait, at home? What is Aristotle talking about? He means something like what the later things say, and there's no more places. But these fingers, after all, at home only in arguments about generation and destruction and movement, for it is practically hold on. That's why it's wonky. Move that one. Only of this sort of substance that they seek the principles and the causes. But those who extend their vision to all things that exist, and of existing things suppose some to be perceptible and others not perceptible, evidently study both classes. Which is all the more reason why one should devote some time to seeing what is good in their views, and what are bad from the standpoint of the inquiry we have before us. The Pythagoreans, he puts in quotation marks for some reason, the Pythagoreans treat of principles and elements stranger than those of physical philosophers. The reason is that they got the principles from nonsensible things. For the objects of mathematics, except those of astronomy, are of the class of things without movement, yet their discussions and investigations are all about nature. For they generate the heavens, and with regard to their parts and attributes and functions, they observe the phenomena and use up the principles and the causes in explaining these. Yeah. Which implies that they agree with the others, the physical philosophers, that the real is just all that which is perceptible. I agree with that. And contained by so-called heavens. But the causes and principles which they mention are, as we have said, and there's a useless annotation there, which, as we have said, sufficient to act as steps even up to higher realms of reality, and are more suited to these than to theories about nature. They do not tell us at all, however, how there can be movement if not the whole camera. How there can be movements if limited and unlimited and odd and even are the only things assumed, and how without movement and change there can be generation and destruction, or the bodies that move through the heavens can do what they do. Further, how far are we to the end of the book? Because I think we're kind of close, actually. I don't think we'll make it, though, but... Further, if one granted them that spatial magnitude consists of these elements, or this were proved, still, how would some bodies be light and others have weight? To judge from what they assume and maintain, they are speaking no more of mathematical bodies than of perceptible. It's been, we've read like 10 minutes. To judge from what they assume and maintain, they are speaking no more of mathematical bodies than of perceptible. Hence, they have said nothing whatsoever about fire or earth or the other bodies of this sort. I suppose because they have nothing to say, which applies peculiarly to perceptible things. Further, how are we to combine the beliefs that the attributes of number, and number itself, are causes of what exists and happens in the heavens, both from the beginning and now, and that there is no other number than this number out of which the world is composed? When in one particular region they place opinion and opportunity, and a little above and below, it's alright, I think, in my opinion, here's my crazy theory. The subject of a discussion is not the point of the discussion, but it is rather an excuse to start talking. It is like an icebreaker, and the actual point of any kind of stream is the rambling. For example, you get the just chatting screen that a lot of streamers do, where they have the just chatting section before they get into the game, and sometimes this just chatting section drags out for a long time. Sometimes they never get to the game at all. They just have a 4-hour just chatting stream. In my opinion, that's a total success. That is the intended goal, and that the game is a failure point. No one actually cares about the game. They're here for the rambling. Injustice and decision, or mixture and analogy, as proof that each of these things is a number, and that there happens to be already in this place a plurality of extended bodies composed of numbers. Because these attributes of numbers attach to the various places, this being so, is this number, which we must suppose each of these abstractions to be, the same number which is exhibited in the material universe, or is it another than this? Plato says it is different, yet even he thinks that both these bodies and their causes are numbers, but that the intelligible numbers are causes, while the others are sensible. And if you ever want to rant about comics and Aristotle, there is a comic. There's no comic about Aristotle, surely not. I've heard about comics about various Romans and Greeks, but not philosophy. In my opinion, someone should make like some kind of thing out of Plato's dialogues that's like a movie or a comic or something like this, or a play that acts out the dialogue, because it is in effect a play. In actuality, a play. Let us leave the Pythagoreans for the present, for it is enough to have touched on them as much as we have done. But as for those who posit the ideas, that's the forms, as causes, firstly, in seeking to grasp the causes of the things around us, they introduced others equal in number to these, as if a man who wanted to count things thought he would not be able to do it while they were few, but tried to count them from when he had added to their number. For the forms are practically equal to, or not fewer than, the things, in trying to explain which these thinkers proceeded from them to the forms. For to each thing, as I try to move the camera and read at the same time, for to each thing there answers an entity which has the same name, and exists apart from the substances. And so, also in the case of all other groups, there is a one over many, whether the many are in this world or are eternal. Further, of the ways in which we prove that the forms exist, none is convincing. For from some, no inference necessarily follows, and from some arise forms even of things which we think there are no forms. For according to the arguments, from the existence of the sciences, there will be forms of all things, of which there are sciences. And according to the one over many arguments, there will be forms even of negations. And according to the argument that there is an object for thought even when the thing has perished, there will be forms of perishable things, for we have an image of these. Further, of the more accurate arguments, some lead to the ideas of relations, of which we say there is no independent class, and others introduce the third man. I forget what the third man is. And, in general, the arguments for the forms destroy the things for whose existence we are more zealous than for the existence of the ideas, for it follows that not the dyad, but number is first. This is really wonky. But number is first. That the relative is prior to the absolute. Besides all other points on which certain people, by following out opinions held about the ideas, have come into conflict with the principles of the theory. Further, according to the assumption on which our belief in the ideas rests, there will be forms not only of substances, but also of many other things. For the concept is single, not only in the case of substances, but also in the other cases. There are sciences not only of substance, but also of other things, and a thousand other such difficulties confront them. But according to the necessities of the case and the opinions held about the forms, if forms can be shared in there, must be ideas of substances only. Sorry, hold on. If forms can be shared in, I'm not sure how to read that, for they are not shared incidentally, but a thing must share in its form as in something not predicated of a subject, by being shared in incidentally. I mean, for example, that if a thing shares in double itself, it shares also in eternal. But incidentally, for eternal happens to be predicable of the double, therefore the forms will be substance. But the same terms indicate substance in this and in the ideal world. Or what will be the meaning of saying that there is something apart from the particulars, the one over the many? And if the ideas and the particulars that share in them have the same form, there will be something common to these. For why should two be one and the same in the perishable twos, or in those which are many but eternal, and not the same as in two itself, as in the particular two? Or he might have smoked ancient Zaza right in this part. Yeah, I very frequently lose. See, the thing about Aristotle is the way he writes like that video about the missile knowing where it is. That's what he writes like. It's like, it's not actually that complicated. He writes it and it sounds incomprehensible. That's the hard part. But if they have not the same form, they must have only the name in common. And it is as if one would school both Callias and a wooden image of a man without observing any community between them. Above all, one might discuss the question what on earth the forms contribute to sensible things, either to those that are eternal or those that come into being and cease to be, for they cause neither movements nor any change in them. But again, they help in no wise either towards the knowledge of the other things, for they are not even the substance of these, else they would have been in them, or towards their being, if they are not in the particulars which share in them. Though, if they were, they might be thought to be causes, as white causes whiteness in a white object. with some classical Greek logic here, by entering into its composition. But this argument, which first Anaxagoras and later Eudoxus and certain others used, is very easily upset. We've got a at-ram. You have to explain the at-ram joke here. So, I think that's because I mentioned Greek. That's it. I mentioned the Greeks. This thing gets wonkier by the day. Good enough. No, not good enough. I'm not even on that. Mysterious Greek logic. Let's see. It's very easily upset, for it is not difficult to collect many insuperable objections to such a view. But further, all other things cannot come from the forms in any of the usual senses of from. And to say that they are patterns and the other things share in them is to use empty words and poetical metaphors. That's a good argument about against the sort of the Greeks. A lot of ancient sort of Greek philosophy and stuff can really be described as poetical metaphors, but it doesn't really mean anything. It just sounds poetical, but it's ultimately not really connected to any. It's not really sound. For what is it that works leading to the ideas, and anything that can either be or become like another without being copied from it? So whether Socrates exists or not, or not a man like Socrates might come to be, and evidently this might be so even if Socrates were eternal. And there will be several patterns of the same thing, and therefore several forms, i.e. animal and two-footed, and man himself will be forms of man. Again, the forms are patterns, not only of sensible things, but of forms themselves, i.e. the genus, as the genus of various species will be so. Therefore the same thing will be pattern and copy. Again, it would seem impossible that the substance and that of which it is substance should exist apart. How, therefore, could the ideas, being the substances of things, exist apart? In the Phaedo of Plato, the case is stated in this way, that the forms are causes both of being and of becoming, yet when the forms exist, still the things that share in them do not come into being, unless there is something to originate movement, and many other things come into being, such as a house or a ring, of which we say there are no forms. Clearly, therefore, even the other things can both be and come into being owing to such causes as produce the things just mentioned. Again, if the forms are numbers, how can they be causes? Is it because existing things are other numbers? For example, one number is man, another is Socrates, another is Callias. Why then are one set of numbers causes of the other set? It will not make any difference, even if the former are eternal and the latter are not. But if it is, because things in this sensible world, such as harmony, are ratios of number, evidently the things between which they are ratios are some one class of things. I feel like there's some meaning lost in translation here. I agree. Although, we must rest easy in that it's probably all bunk anyway. If, then, the matter, is some definite thing, evidently the numbers themselves too will be ratios of something to something else. For example, if Callias is a numerical ratio between fire and earth and water and air, his idea also will be a number of certain other underlying things. And man himself, whether it is a number in a sense or not, will still be a numerical ratio of certain things. Look at that, book two, but we've got to read this page first. We're going to make it. And also, look how short book 2 is. It's one page. But we'll get to the start of book 2 and we'll end there. And not a number proper. Nor will it be a kind of number merely because it is a numerical ratio. Again, from many numbers, one number is produced. But how can one form come from many forms? And If the number comes not from the many numbers themselves, but from the units in them, for example in 10,000, how is it with the units? If they are specifically alike, numerous absurdities will follow. And also, if they are not alike, neither the units in one number being themselves like another, nor those in other numbers being alike to all. For in what will they differ, as they are without quality? This is not a plausible view, nor is it consistent with our thoughts on the matter. Further, they must set up a second kind of number, with which arithmetic deals, and all the objects which are called intermediate by some thinkers, and how do these exist, or from what principles do they proceed? Or why must they be intermediate between the things in this sensible world and the things themselves? I think they might be talking about, like, in between whole numbers. I think that's what they might be talking about there, but we may never know. Further, the units in 2 must each come from a prior 2, but this is impossible. Further, why is a number, when taken all together, 1? Again, besides what has been said, if the units are diverse, the Platonists should have spoken like those who say there are 4 or 2 elements. For each of these thinkers gives the name of elements, not to that which is common, i.e. to body, but to fire and earth. Whether there is something common to them, viz. Body or not, but in fact the Platonists speak as if the one were homogeneous, like fire or water. Oh yeah, see, it's part of the difficulty here is you have to throw away all your understanding of modern science. I've got water. They think water is a homogeneous thing. Then if you were to zoom in on water, you'll just find only water. You'll never find molecules and separate things. And of course, and then fire as well, because fire is like water, that you could zoom in and you could find all the parts of fire. It's sort of a... I wonder what the common understanding of numbers was like in Greece. As far as I'm aware, I think it varied a little bit, but as far as I'm aware, 0 didn't exist, because that was nothing. You can't say nothing is something, that's a contradiction, so nothing cannot be spoken of entirely. 1 is not a number because it's not a plurality, it's just single, it's one thing. You don't, if you have a number of something, you have a plurality of something. Negative numbers also don't exist because that's nonsense. Therefore, numbers begin at 2 and only count upwards. I think they had a concept of infinity, though. I think they could conceive of that. And if this is so, the numbers will not be substances. Evidently, if there is a 1 itself, and this is a first principle, 1 is being used in more than one sense, for otherwise the theory is impossible. When we wish to reduce substances to their principles, we state that lines come from the short and the long, i.e. from a kind of small and great, and the plane from the broad and the narrow, and the body from the deep and the shallow. Yet how then can either the plane contain a line, or the solid a line or a plane? For the broad and the narrow is a different class from the deep and the shallow. Therefore, just as number is not present in these, because the many and the few are different from these, evidently no other of the higher classes will be present in the lower. But again, the broad is not a genus, which includes the deep, for then the solid. For then, oh no, I got overexcited and thought we had made it to the next page. How did he say there's no unit before 2? Yeah, he did say that, because that it's not a number at that point. It's just 1. It's singular. But although I will say the Greeks were smart guys, and so they were advancing at a quick rate. You know, you'll notice here Aristotle will not refer to the gods, but will refer to God. He's not a Christian. Christ has not yet been born yet, but he is he is conceiving of a more sophisticated kind of God. So they're always in this sort of they're in this eternal transition period, and then it's so it's a bit complicated in that sense as to what exactly they believe in. What they believe in, one day will be changed the next day. It's sort of like if the theories we had, if people were to look at the 20th century, for example, 5,000 years from the future, they would find similar contradictions. They would say, well, they believed that cigarettes were healthy, but they also believed cigarettes were unhealthy in the 20th century. They believed both things. It was a transition period. And at such a distant vantage point from the ancient Greeks, it's hard to see the difference between the start of a century and the end of it. It seems like such a small period of time when things are moving fast. Would have been a species of plane. Further, from what principle will the presence of points in the line be derived? Plato even used to object to this class of things as being a geometrical fiction. I think it's a geometrical fiction. He gave the name of the principle of the line, and this he often posited to the indivisible lines, yet these must have a limit. Therefore the argument, from which the existence of the line follows, proves also the existence of the points. In general, though philosophy seeks the cause of perceptible things, we have given this up, for we say nothing of the cause from which change takes its start. But while we fancy we are stating the substance of perceptible things, we assert the existence of a second class of substances, while our account of the way in which they are substances of perceptible things is empty talk. For sharing, as we've said before, means nothing. Nor have the forms any connection with what we see to be the cause in the case of the arts. For whose sake both all mind and the whole of nature are operative. With this cause which we assert, I'm zoomed out too far, I can't read clearly. With this cause which we assert to be one of the first principles, but mathematics has come to be identical with philosophy for modern thinkers, though they say that it should be studied for the sake of other things. And it refers to Plato's Republic here. What book? Book 7. I think he was talking about for the purposes of being a more moral person. Mad disrespect having a 1 for a footnote in an Aristotle book. I suppose so. Further, one might suppose that the substance which, according to them, underlines as matter is too mathematical, and is predicate and differentia of the substance, i.e. of the matter, rather than the matter itself. I.e. the great and the small are like the rare and the dense, which the physical philosophers speak of, calling these the primary differentiate of the substratum. For these are a kind of excess and defect. And regarding movement, if the great and the small are to be movements, evidently the forms will be moved. But if they are not to be movement, whence did movement come? And the whole study of nature has been annihilated. And what is thought to be easy to show that all things are one is not done, for what is proved by the method of setting out instances is not that all things are one, but that there is a one itself. If we grant all the assumptions, and not even this follows. If we do not grant that the universal is a genus, and this in some cases it cannot be, nor can it be explained either how the lines and planes and solids that come after the numbers exist, exist or can exist, or what significance they have. For these can be neither forms, for they are not numbers, nor the intermediates, for those are objects of mathematics, nor the perishable things. That is evidently a distinctly fourth case. In general, if we search for the elements of existing things without distinguishing the many senses in which things are said to exist, we cannot find them, especially if the search for the elements of which things are made is conducted in this manner. For it is surely impossible to discover what acting or being acted on or the straight is made of. But if the elements can be discovered at all, it is only the elements of substances. Therefore, either to seek the elements of all existing things or to think one has them is incorrect. And how can we learn the elements of all things? And how can we learn the elements of all things? Evidently, we cannot start by knowing anything before, for he who is learning geometry, though he may know other things before, knows none of the things with which the science deals, and about which he is to learn. And so it is in all other cases. Therefore, if there is a science of all things, such as some assert to exist, he who is learning this will know nothing before. Yet all learning by means of premises, which are either all or some of them known before. Whether the learning be by demonstration or by definitions, for the elements of the definition must be known before and be familiar, and learning by induction proceeds similarly. But again, if the science were actually innate, it was strange that we are unaware of that position of the greatest of all sciences. Again, how is... Oh yeah, this is another thing, and it's probably a translation thing. He starts his sentences with "again," even though he has never once mentioned what he is about to say. You know, he's gaslighting us. He's gaslighting us. You know, imagine you walk into a classroom, you know, it'd be like, and you start teaching, and now again, 2 + 2 = 4. It's like, wait, I've never heard this before. You know, it's like he just, see for yourself. Again, how is one to come to know what all things are made of? He hasn't said that before. It's the first time he's said it. And how is this to be made evident? This also affords a difficulty. For there might be a conflict of opinion, as there is about certain syllables. Some say that za is made out of s and d and a, like sda, while others say it is a distinct sound, and none of those that are familiar. Further, how could we know the objects of sense without having the sense in question? Yet we ought to. If the elements of which all things consist, as complex sounds consist of the elements proper to sound, are the same. I can't say that word. Gasristotle. There we go. It's a bit of a tongue twister in one word. It is evident, then, even from what we have said before, that all men seem to seek the causes named in the physics. Reference, physics. And that we cannot name any beyond these. But they seek these vaguely, and though in a sense they all have been described before, in a sense they have not been described at all. For the earliest philosophy is, on all subjects, like one who lisps, since it is young in its beginnings. For even Empedocles says bone exists by virtue of the ratio in it. Now this is the essence and the substance of the thing, but it is similarly necessary that flesh and each of these other tissues should be the ratio of its elements, or that not one of them should. For it is on account of this that both flesh and bone and everything else will exist, and not on account of the matter which he names fire and earth and water and air. But while he would necessarily have agreed, if another had said this, he has not said it clearly. On these questions, our view has been expressed before, but let us return to enumerate the difficulties that might be raised on those same points. For perhaps we may get them from some help towards our later difficulties. We reached the end of book 1. There are 14 books in this book. It's about 200 pages long. We're about 5 pages into it. Where's my bookmark? Put the bookmark in. My bookmark, which is just a piece of printer paper cut into a strip. Nothing fancy. But let's go back to the contents page before we finish, and have a look at what to expect. Now that we've read one book, that'll give us an idea, because the contents pages in Aristotle are really quite dense. They don't really tell you very much, So we've just read book 1 here, and you see it's all criticisms. It's all He's, he's criticizing all the various philosophies before he gets to his own, which some arrogance in that perhaps, but good to do. Good to do. Book 2 is going to be very short. What's he talking about? General considerations about the study of philosophy. There cannot be an infinite series, nor an infinite variety of kinds or causes. Different methods are appropriate to different studies. That sounds like it's going to be quite interesting. What's book 3 about? Book 3 continues on to the next column here. Sketch of the main problems of philosophy. Can one science treat of all the four causes? Are the primary axioms treated of by the science of substance? Does the science of substance treat of its attributes? Are the genera, or constituent parts, their first principles? Is there anything apart from individual things? Is each of the first principles one or number? Are being and unity substances or attributes? Are first principles universal or individual? Our object is the study of being. We must study primary being, i.e. substance, unity and plurality. We must study also the primary axioms, the connection of such denial with Protagoras' doctrine of relativity. Further refutations, the law of the excluded middle. And then halfway through the book we have a dictionary, where he gives us where he gives his definitions of all the words he means, like being and substance, and I really don't know why this is not at the start of the book. It would be very helpful. You know, and all sorts of things. Book 6. Distinction of theology. The science of being as such, and other theoretical sciences. 4 senses of being. Nature, accidents. The study of being is primarily the study of science. Various opinions on the question, what things are substances? Is a thing the same as its essence? Analysis of generation. Mutilated Moncaress. Oh, did he have that in there? Mutilated. We'll see if we get that far. It'll take us a long time to get that far. Discussion of sensible substances. Being. Potency. Now here it says shorter form of sense, and I was worried about this for a moment. I thought, hang on a minute, have I bought an abridged Aristotle? He's got the shorter form of metaphysics? No. These are referring to physics, a previous book which I've read in full, and these are shorter forms of this, which I suppose he has put in here as a recap so he can talk on whatever goes on in book 11. More stuff. This is the all on the topic of metaphysics. And where does it end? The principles. How is number supposed to be derived from its elements? The causal agent. Oh yeah, one thing that the Greeks do is they end their books with no ending, no summary, nothing. They get to the end of their list of things, and that's it. That's just the end. There's no neat rounding off of it. It's just the end. They just end. Yeah, it's very very funny. Yeah, here this is the end of meteorology. After the homogeneous bodies have been explained, we must consider the non-homogeneous too, and lastly the bodies made up of these, such as man, plants, and the rest. It just ends. There's no thanks for reading. Nothing. And often the introductions are like this as well. I think Metaphysics is pretty nicely composed, where they do kind of have a kind of neat introduction, but oftentimes they just go into it. It's very strange. I did put my thing in. Okay, they have it in prior analytics as well, but a lot of times they just start abruptly and and end abruptly. No introduction, no summary. Oh, we made it to the end. We almost even got to 2 hours. You know, for me having not slept at all, that went a lot better than I thought. I understood like a little bit of it. Ah. Oh, I didn't even eat the other biscuit. But there we go, biscuit devoured. That's the end. That's the end. I'm surprised that went as well as it did. I was kind of expecting this to be a failure of a stream. I was going to get like 10 minutes in and just be totally done and want to fall asleep. But it actually went well. I'm going to see how the rest of my day goes. You know, I was kind of hoping to do like 6 hours of drawing today. I don't think that's going to happen. Let's see what this is. Aristotle, a graphic biography. Biography. Oh, it's in that. See, it's in this style. You know, I mean, you know, I'm not complaining. I'm not complaining, but in general, there's a why must they draw in this manner? So many comic artists do. It's typically sort of the Euro comics do this, where if they're not drawing like a superhero comics, they draw in this very like newspaper comic sort of way. Very caricaturesque and it's like, do they want to draw like this, or can they just simply not draw any other way? Why don't they? Anime doesn't do this. Anime always draws things pretty, you know. But I never see people just make something look good. It's always it's always either it's always ugly in some way. It's always some sort of newspaper caricature or superhero stuff with too many muscles, or you know, no, you know, I think you know, now I don't dare really make this argument because it's really biased, but honestly, I think that the way anime looks is just simply they've just made things look good. That's just it. They've just made things look good. The eyes look the way they are because they look pretty. The faces because they're attractive, and the hair because it looks nice, and they just draw things that look nice. It just you know, objective standards of beauty. And then if you don't draw like that, then you make your characters look ugly. You know, it's like the nose thing. I was arguing about like the nose thing and like the lips and the philtrum, I think it's called, in between the lips and the mouth and the nose. And it's like, why would you ever draw that? It looks ugly if you draw that, so don't draw it. And then if you don't, so if you seek to draw in a way that is pretty, then what you draw will look like anime. That's like that's my personal opinion. I don't dare really make a strong argument of that because it's kind of a bad argument. I don't know about nowadays, but back in me days, art schools would hate you for drawing anime. Now, I never did draw anime when I was in art school, but I suspect that they would have also had that. I've also heard this a lot. I suspect that if I had drawn anime, they would also discourage it. And it's really bizarre. It's really bizarre because how else do they expect you to draw? Do they expect you to draw realistically? What value is there in that? There hasn't really been any money to be made in drawing realistically for a very long time, since like the camera was invented. There's no such thing as a portrait painter anymore. That's not a career. Well, my school specifically was like, abstract art is the only... Okay, yeah, they were... Yeah, you're right, they were kind of like that, like, for mine. I remember I dropped out of art school, and I've heard this basically the same story from other people who've also dropped out. Well, one day they had us pick up... They gave us a microphone, like a audio sound recorder thing, and we had to go around and we had to record sounds of things like stepping on leaves and banging against metal railings, and then we're going to compose those together to make art. And it was so far removed from drawing pictures that I just dropped out. I just didn't go back. There was no point. There was no point whether I failed that class, whether it meant nothing, because it was a waste of time. It was a total waste of time. And I've heard basically that same story from another. There's another artist I used to speak to a lot who had basically the same story. In his case, he was gluing leaves to a canvas, and he talks how one day he goes to his teacher, and he says to him, he says, "Why am I gluing leaves to a canvas? What is the point of this?" You know, and then he left. I had to fail the year, otherwise my mum would have forced me to keep going. I think. I'm surprised that I was able to quit. I don't know. I can't remember what my parents would have said about that. And they must have said something, but maybe they thought it was a waste of time as well. Maybe I convinced them it was a waste of time, and they said, yeah, don't bother going back there. It's a waste of time. But it was such a waste of time. You know, I hate, like, you know, they call it contemporary art, but, you know, they've been using the word, you know, contemporary means present day, but they're kind of not really doing it anymore. They are, but, like, it's been going on long enough that it really needs a name. Installation art, that's what they call it, installation art. At least that's what they call it in England. I don't know if they have names for it in whatever other country. But, it's so stupid. It's so stupid. Here's my opinion. Art is, art is about communication. It's similar to music. Hold on. Sex-based terms. Wait. Oh, dude! Everyone says it's the school that turns you into bum. Wait, yeah. It said it blocked it because it was sex-based. A sex-based term. That's funny. You get turned into a butt. But the you know, in my opinion, things like art and music and these sorts of things, they're about communication. You communicate something to another person, you know, a feeling, an emotion, an idea, you know, an ideal or, you know, some philosophy. You're communicating something, you know. That's the reason you show it to other people. You express something because you want what you express to be understood by others. You're communicating. We're social animals, we communicate. And to communicate, you must use language. You must communicate effectively. If you attempt to communicate but the other person doesn't understand what you've communicated, then you haven't communicated at all. You know, a good example of this is the piano. Let's say you want to communicate. You want to communicate the emotion of a breakup. You know, like a romantic relationship that's broken up. The sad or anger. You want to communicate that. That's what that feeling of I've broken up with my partner and it's very sad and I'm very angry now. How do you do that? Now, you could just mash on the keyboard angrily because you're angry. You would have expressed yourself that you were angry, yes, but you wouldn't have communicated that you were angry or sad. That wouldn't be communicated. It would just be anger crashing on the keyboard. It would just be noise. It would sound no different if you were angry or sad or happy or if it was a monkey crashing on the keyboard. So instead what you have to do is you have to use a language. You have to communicate effectively, and that means you write a song and you carefully pick your notes and you write a song about emotional heartbreak. And there are many songs like it, and they communicate the emotion. You listen to the song and you feel, you get it. That's communication. It can't be done just by feeling. It has to be intelligent. And the same applies to art. You know, if I go and if I go and hang a bunch of chairs up on strings in a somewhat random assortment, and I say this expresses whatever, some nonsense, and if you have to put a piece of paper in the corner that explains what you've done, you haven't communicated at all. You've failed completely. If you need a piece of paper to explain the point of your art, it's worthless. It's completely worthless. The art itself should explain it. Now, you know, some things can be quite complicated. Maybe you see a statue and you don't know who the statue is of because you're not familiar with the myth or something. You know, if you ever, you know, think of there's that famous statue of Apollo chasing Daphne and she's turning into a tree. If you don't know of the myth, then you won't you won't get it, and it's just kind of a pretty statue. Sometimes you need context. But let's say you already know the context. Let's say you're classically educated, and you see this statue, and you say, I can recognise that this person here is Apollo because he has the laurel wreath crown on his head, and this lady here, she's being chased by him. So this is clearly a lover of Apollo, and she's turning into a tree. So she is clearly the daughter of some nature nymph or something like that. So this is clearly referring to the story of Apollo and Daphne. And you would know, and you don't need you've already got the context in mind, and then the emotion of it is all communicated and all that. But ideally, you don't even need to do that. But this installation art, this contemporary art or abstract art, modernist art, it communicates nothing. It communicates nothing. You have to. If I take away the plaques and I ask people what's this about, you'll get a million different answers. They may feel it's profound, but if everyone gives a million different answers, then it means nothing. You haven't communicated anything. You're just letting people project onto it. That's worthless. That's not communication at all. It's like, hello, ANC Century. I haven't seen you in some time. How are you doing? How are you doing? We've reached the end. We were reading Aristotle today. We're becoming big brain, and it went quite well. We got to the end of the chapter. Which is very nice. Yeah, we're ranting about art. And I've got this. Also, you have to hold on. Let me get my obligatory my card that says welcome to stream. If you need to raid and run, please feel free to do so. Please tell me what you are streaming, and I hope you are very cool. See, when I raid someone, I'm very mean. I'm a very rude and mean person. So when I raid someone, I'm out of there. I'm like, all right. I'm out of here. See ya. But other people, they're a bit more polite. And they have to wait. They have to wait for the streamer to give them permission to leave, otherwise they will be trapped there forever. Vampire, the Masquerade, Bloodlines. I've never heard of that. It sounds. Does it sound retro? Maybe. I think it sounds retro. It sounds PS1-esque. That's my guess. I don't play minigames. I play like Factorio and stuff. But yes, I was ranting about art. And I was right. From 20,024, totally retro. From the what would that be? The 200th century, or is that 2000th century? It'll be retro one day. In 20,045, it'll be retro. But yeah, I was ranting about art and why I don't like modern art. And the reason why I don't like modern art is because I don't get it. And that's not an admission of a skill issue there. I think I don't get it because it doesn't communicate anything. And if it doesn't communicate anything, it's worthless. Because art, in my opinion, is about communication. The teacher that was supposed to teach us painting in school would tell us at the start of class, okay, use this and draw something. And then he'd spend the rest of the class browsing Facebook. Oh, that reminds me. Once, we learned to draw a face. And it started out not with Andrew Loomis, as it should have done, but with draw this upside down egg. Draw an upside down egg shape. And I knew in that moment that I was not going to learn how to draw a face in that class. I had quit at this point, but I heard from other students who carried on, and they told me that in the next year they did life drawing. And I thought, what? You did life drawing? You learned some anatomy? You learned figure drawing? You learned gestures? He said, no, we didn't learn any of those things. Instead, we put on blindfolds, and we got random. What did they get? I think they got like shapes, like random like bits of twigs and rocks and stuff like that, and they dipped them in paint, and then they put on the canvas how it made them feel, and that was their figure drawing. There was no anatomy, no nothing. The whole point of figure drawing is it is a study of the human body with a reference in front of you. Oh, I should have asked if the model was even naked. I bet the model wasn't even naked. Speaking of life drawing, I once attended a life drawing, say like a club, a little get together of like not in a school or anything, just random people in the wild, who got together. They hired a model, and everyone paid some money for the evening, and that paid for the model, and the rent of the room. And once per week we did a few hours of life drawing. It was pretty fun. It was so casual. It was so casual. It was great. It was great. I think we would draw for about an hour, and then there'd be like a 30-minute break where we all get together and we eat some biscuits and tea, and the model would be there too. And sometimes they stayed naked. Sometimes they put their clothes back on. It depended on the model. We did have life drawings with a naked lady once every 2 weeks. Once every 2 weeks for 45 minutes. That's so bad. That's not enough. That's not enough. In my opinion, if I was running an art school, life drawing would be every day, and how much you want to attend is up to you. It would just be like a thing that exists. Like every day, the life drawing goes on at 12 o'clock or something, and you can either go to your lunch or you can go do life drawing or whatever, or make it part of the class, and you can choose to go on. And if you want, you can go 5 days a week, or you can go once every 2 weeks if you want. Because frankly, the more the better. The more the better. And I'd say the same thing for if I was also running an art school, I would have a room set up that is set up for doing still lives. I'd have a bunch of cool objects that are chosen because of their useful colours and shapes and textures and stuff like that are good for doing still lives. There'd be all kinds of setups for lighting, so you'd have all kinds of studio lighting. You can change the colour of the lighting. There'll be windows for natural lighting if you want natural lighting. You can put them in boxes. You can change the colour of the background. I would have all kinds of things. But the point of still lives, if you're doing a still life, it's a study of all those sorts of things. It's a study of values and colours and textures and that sort of things. And the more you can control the variables, the more what does, like, let's say you were drawing let's say you got a bunch of like bricks, like Lego bricks, and they're all different colours. And you want to know how to draw these kinds of colours under different sorts of light. Let's say you set up a sunset lighting scenario, and you get your colours. What does the colour blue become under sunset lighting? It becomes almost black. What does the colour red become under sunset lighting? I think in the shadows it also becomes black, but I think in the light it remains quite red. What about white? What is white becoming in sunset lighting? And what about the reflected light? How does that look? And what does it look like from this angle? And then all these variables, these are what you can learn through still lives. It's not about drawing pretty fruit bowls. It's about learning those kinds of fundamentals. Literally everything I know about lighting I learned from the internet and not school. Yeah, I could say that, but more than just lighting. Everything I learned about art, I learned online and through my own studies. The art school is completely worthless. I'm convinced the teachers probably had no talent themselves. I don't think the teachers. I don't recall the teachers ever showing us their art. It's probably just a load of abstract nonsense. They probably, but it's difficult. It's difficult. It's I think part of the problem is is that there's no industry for art. Not really. I mean, there was for a little bit, for a short period of time, there was a concept art industry. And I remember I got into art during the concept art industry hype, and it was like a big thing. Yeah, you remember Feng Zhu Design on YouTube, and that's actually the reason why I draw so fast. Because if you want to be a concept artist, you have to draw really fast. So I got really good at drawing really fast and getting to a minimum viable product as quickly as possible, not wasting time faffing around. But that doesn't exist anymore. The first the Chinese took it over, and then the AI took it over from the Chinese, and then you're not gonna get paid a penny for being a concept artist anymore. Unless it's like some really crazy out there original idea for a game or movie. No. Back in like 2013, if you think of like Halo 4. Halo 4 was terrible. But think of Halo 4. Think of the like the concept design for Halo 4, where they've got like all the sci-fi shapes and everything's all floaty and pointy and and it's got glowing lines going through it. That's all concept art slop. It was such a big thing back in that time. And you could get so much work by doing that. You wanna draw a mech? You making this sci-fi mech? What do we do? What do we do for a sci-fi mech? Let's see. There's two approaches, two ways to make a sci-fi mech. The first technique is you get a bug, you get an insect like an ant, and you make a mech out of an ant. It's like, oh yes, look, it's a robot, but it's totally an ant. It's got a fly or something like that. The other method, which is even lazier, is you make a random shape, a literal random shape, and then you turn it into a spaceship. Oh, that's for sci-fi. For medieval, what you do is you think, okay, we're gonna make this medieval Japanese samurai thing. So what do we do? Okay, first we get like the shogun outfit thing where he's got the armor, but we'll make it bigger. And then we put on the straw hat, the really big straw hat, and you can see through it. It's got holes poked through it, so you can see through the straw hat. And he's got swords. He's got like 4 swords, and then in the background there you just copy and paste that and you make them silhouettes. So you've got 4 samurai in the background. There's a boat, and it's got the sails. The sails of the Eastern style boat. There's a shrine in the background. There's a big what do they call it? Pagoda shrine in the background. Going up super high. It's got like 20 levels to it. It's really foggy, really misty. There's some blood splatter halfway up it, and then get some random calligraphy going down the page. Doesn't mean anything. It just whatever was on your Chinese food takeaway box. And that's it. There, you get 100k a year. There's so many games and stuff like that were exactly that. Oh, ironically, it was the first thing that AI did. Like seriously, it was the first thing that AI did. Seriously, I remember like the first prompt that you heard that went around was was it Craig Mullins or was that a different guy? Mark Mullins? I can't remember, but it was like masterpiece concept art by something Mullins, and that was it. And that was it. It was over there and there. Oh. Or don't forget the sci-fi sphere. Okay, you draw rocky landscape. How do we make it look sci-fi? We draw circle. Like the perfect circle, and it's got like greeble on it. It glows. It's got lines going up and down, and it's floating in the air. And then we draw like a little man in the foreground, a little silhouette of a man looking towards it, so we know how big everything is. That'll be thousands of dollars, please. That's it. The AI could just you don't even have to ask the AI to do it. If you just say make me sci-fi concept art, and it'll make you a million of those. I think also near the end, I think Blender started to get really good, and so people stopped there used to be a hard division between the artist and the modeler, and it started blurring together, and you started getting the if you was a concept artist, it's like, okay, I know you're making this concept art really quickly, but it'd be really helpful if you also make it a 3D model. That way I can fire the 3D modeler and you be the 3D modeler. You don't get paid for it, of course. It's all part of the concept art job, but, so just make the 3D model for me as well. We'll clean it up a little after you're done. And I think then there was a lot of then people just stopped painting altogether. Painting was like that's old fashioned. Now you just 3D model your concept art. And some people got really good at that. And then photo bashing was somewhere around that as well. I'm halfway through the Blender donut. I'm halfway through it. I have been halfway through it for about 5 years now, maybe more actually. I thought so. I made a big mistake. I thought that the Blender donut tutorial was 14 minutes long. It's not 14 minutes long. It's 14 parts long, or some other number. I forget the number. It's very long. It's really, really long. And I misunderstood it. I thought it was a short tutorial just to show you the basic controls. And it is, but it's bigger than that. There's And if I were to do the blender donut again, what I would do is I would get a notebook out, and every time when it tells me, okay, and now you do this, this, and this to make the sprinkles all randomly aligned, I would write down what that actually means. I'd say, this isn't here. This isn't. They're not really focused on the making the sprinkles random colours. This is a tool for doing this, 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 and it could be applied in a general sense. That's what I would do, and then I'd actually have a lot of useful tools. There's even a new tutorial. Is it still a donut, though? And does it still look good? It has to look tasty. You know, but I think if I see a lot of people, they do the donut, they make this beautiful donut, delicious donut, best donut ever, and then they close the donut and they open up a new Blender window, and they think, okay, now I'm going to make my thing, and then they don't even know what to do. They have no idea how to do anything, because they learned how to make this donut, but they didn't learn the general principles. They didn't pay attention. And I was going down that route, so I was like, okay, no. I need to just forget this donut now and do it another time. Ay. Oh. You know, I put this stream at 2 p.m. because I thought, well, if I put it at 7 p.m. like my other streams, I might be too tired, and it would be difficult to understand Aristotle. So I'll put it earlier in the day, where my focus will be at its highest, and this has been my downfall. The donut is, it's just for the tools rather than real character modelling. But I mean, you need the tools to make character modelling. I mean, the character modelling part is like, you know, artistic skill, I suppose, but you gotta use the, how do you use the machine? How do you use the tools? I find that's often the hard part. Yeah, I'm totally sleep. Okay, honestly, I'm not even sure. I'm not even sure if I am sleep deprived. I don't even know anymore. I don't even know. So here's what happened. So yesterday, I woke up at 3 p.m., which was pretty average for me, and then I knew I had a stream at 2 p.m. tomorrow. So I thought, okay, I've got to go to bed early. I've got to go to bed early tomorrow because I can't wake up at 3 p.m. tomorrow. I'll miss my stream. I've got to be awake at least at like 12 or something, you know. So maybe 1 p.m. at the latest. So I thought, okay, I'll go to bed early. Yeah. I won't go to bed at 4 a.m. I'll go to bed at like 1 a.m. and then I'll got plenty of time to wake up. That's like 12 hours. It'll take me a few hours to go to sleep, and then I didn't fall asleep. I sat there trying to go to sleep. And then, you know, it went past 1 a.m., 2 a.m., 3 a.m., 4 a.m., 5 a.m., 6 a.m., and I kept looking at the clock, and it just went on and on and on, and I think I got to 8 a.m. I got to about 8 a.m., and I thought, whatever, I'm just gonna get up. And then I thought, okay, I'll get up and I'll do something, and then I'll be really tired, and I'll fall back to sleep, you know, and then I'll move the stream to 7 p.m. And then here I am doing it at 2 p.m. and it's now 4 p.m. and I'm thinking of going to the shop after I end this stream. You know, because in other news, I've got such a backlog. My house is falling apart. The front gate has fallen off. The ceiling's fallen down in 2 rooms. The window's broken. The garden's overgrown. Do you need sleep supplements? I think there's a kind of magnesium that make up. I probably could, and it probably would work, but I don't want to. I'm hesitant. I'm hesitant. You know, I even when I get a cold, I avoid taking. No, sorry. The window's not broken. The sash rope is broken. I can illustrate. One moment. I can illustrate. Because I don't know, because these are kind of old-fashioned style windows, and I don't know how many people have these. Oh crap! My tablet's not plugged in. One moment. Let me set up. Let me get it set up. Unplug that. Yes. There we go. I'm short by 1 USB slot, so that I can't plug in that hand cam camera and my tablet at the same time. It's one or the other. Fortunately, you only need you don't need a hand cam for a tablet. Every now and then I see people do a hand cam for a tablet, and I don't get it. So I can unplug this now and plug my headphones back into my computer, so we don't have to listen to all the sounds. Okie dokie. Has it worked? Has it worked? Yes, it has. Okay. I have old sash windows, and they go up and down. They go up and down. Oof. And there'll be like another one, and it's offset. And they're offset. They'll be like that as well. And then what they are is there's ropes. There's ropes that come up, and then there's these pulleys on the top, and then it goes inside the frame. It goes inside the frame, and it comes down, and on the inside of the frame, and then there's a weight at the bottom. And what's happened is the rope has snapped, so the window will not move up and down. And so what I have to do is there's this piece of wood here that's part of the frame, and it's nailed in place. So I have to yank this out, and then if I zoom in, one moment, and if we zoom in to where, so there'll be the window frame would be here, and then there's a part of the wood here, which is like that, and then I have to hack that out, and then that gives you access to the inside of the thing where you find the weight, and then I have to get both of them out, and then I've got to replace the rope. I bought some rope on Amazon. It's going to show up Wednesday, I hope. And I'm pretty sure the only way it stays inside this part here, I haven't looked at it yet. Probably they vary by the thing, but if we look at the frame from the other side, there's the rope, and I think it's like this. And I think it's like in a groove. There's like a groove in the wood, and I think it's held in with a knot. I think it's just a big knot that holds it in place. And so I'm going to have to tie the right kind of knot so it holds in place. That's what I've got to do. The ceiling is what have I got with the ceiling? The ceiling is currently looks like this. We're looking up at the ceiling, and then you can see the wooden parts here. And then there's the old wooden parts here, and the plaster's all fallen down. You know, it looks like this, and these are the thin wooden slats, and the plaster's all fallen down. I'm not going to replaster it. I'm going to use plasterboard. I found some plasterboard in a dumpster skip, which I'm gonna put up there, and I've got to put it like this, so they go halfway between the things, and then they screw in place, and then it'll cover that up, and I'll put another one there, and then I'll probably just like fill in the edges with filler, and then plaster over it thinly. Then I'll fix my ceiling. Oh, and then the gate. I've got a gate. My gate looks like this. My gate looks like that. If I can draw a straight line. My God, I can't draw a straight line. Bum 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 bum. And then there's a part that goes another bit there, another bit there, and then there's a one that goes down. That's my gate, the latch part here. And what's happened is basically all of this part here, or no, rather, all of this part here has rotted away, which means it's also lost the hinge part here. So I've got to, so I've taken off these three, and also part of this, and I've got to replace this part here. I think also on this side here, this is also rotted away, and it's become harder to latch it here. So I've got to. So for this part here, I think what I'm going to do is, so I'm going to, so I've already cut off the rotten part here, so this is already gone. But I want to add another piece of wood here, and I think maybe the way I'll do it is I'll cut out a notch here like that, and then I'll put in a piece of wood like that, and I'll screw it in. I'll screw it in, and that'll probably work. I live in a house from 1890. What other problems are there in the house? My kitchen floor is all wonky. It's all... I can't even illustrate that, but it's wonky. I'm not going to do anything with that, though, but really what needs to be done is the lino floor needs to be taken up, and then concrete needs to be poured to fill in the holes. So my floor's all sort of... It's more like this. It's sort of like there's low spots. There's low spots. Where it should be perfectly smooth. So I need to pour concrete in there, and then it'll be all level, and that would fix the problem. What else is wrong with my house? Adds wonky kitchen floor to the sun notes. Yes, I have a wonk. The problem is water. It's water problem. That's the problem of it, and it's made us. And what's made it even worse is that my washing machine is also in the kitchen, and because the floor is wonky, it vibrates a lot more than it should, because it's not at the right angle, and this makes the problem worse. What else is wrong with my house? I recently got the roof fixed. The roof was I don't have a utility room. It's all in the kitchen. I don't have a tumble dryer though. I put stuff on a washing line. Oh yeah, my garden is terrible. So I've got a garden. In fact, I've got a drawing of my garden, perhaps part of my garden. Let me go find it. How do I find it? This is a drawing of my garden that I did a while ago. And it's not really visible here. I think if we were to extend it out, there's the gate, the wall goes further. This goes in, and then it comes out here, and it's all concrete here. But there is older concrete here. There's older concrete here, which goes here, and this concrete is really good. This is like old concrete, and there's no problem here. But here is this new concrete where really there should be grass or something, and it's really crap, and it's all cracked. It's rubbish. Load of rubbish. My shed is beyond repair. Also, I should get rid of my shed. Let me try and draw the shed. I'll try and draw the shed. Oh no, tumble dryer's dry. Yeah, it's pretty bad. Like hanging drying is always better anyway. I'll draw my shed. So this is my shed, and on the back side, not visible here, the I will draw it on the back side. If we imagine this is the back side of it, all of this part here is gone. It's fallen down, and so there's just sort of like the wooden supports holding up, but all the wood is gone. On the roof, the what's it called? The tarping is all ripped off, so it's got the bare wood exposed here. I mean, it's crappy chipboard stuff, but the tar part stuff is all decayed and fallen apart. The door is actually at an angle. It's actually at a total angle. What else? The floor is rotted. The floor is just totally rotted away. It's like it's sort of like it's got about the consistency of like toffee now. You can just put your finger straight through it. It's at that stage. I put a piece of wood here to stop it rotting, but that piece of wood has now rotted. The window has a crack going through it, but it's just a plastic perspex thing, so it doesn't really matter. What else? I think that's about it. I think if you were to put your hands like here and you would lift up, you could lift up the whole shed, and the floor would stay where it is. It's beyond repair. It's beyond repair. There's a few things in it, and I kind of need to get rid of it and then dismantle the whole shed and get rid of it. He will rebuild it, inshallah. Got that inshallah meme. That's so funny. Oh. But yeah. Oh, also one thing. Since you're a streamer, also I can preach here. I can be a preacher. Now I'm on my art. Now since you also do art, you most likely have a scene for art, right? You know, and when you want to when you want to take a picture, show a picture to stream, well, you know, it's a huge nuisance to have to go to OBS, upload image, and then transform it. It's all a big nuisance. A much better strategy is to go to your art program and then just like copy and paste images into it. It's you because it's your art program, you'll be very familiar with it and how to manipulate stuff in it. And it's a much better way to quickly show images on screen rather than have to port them into OBS. You put them into your art program, go to your art program, and then go back to whatever else you was doing. That I'm preaching this. This is what everyone should do. And even if you're not an artist, you should like just have like a scene for MS Paint or something. It's so much better than putting images into OBS. And then of course, then you've got them in OBS, and you're not going to delete them, so you just hide it, and then you have a million images in OBS, and you can't find it. Terrible, terrible. Much better have an art program. That's how you show images. It's the way to be. But alrighty. I will end here for certain. I will end here. Good fun. We read through some Aristotle. We ranted about some stuff. I showed you that my house is falling down. It's all good fun. Thanks for watching. These are just random images on my documents. Don't ask why. Nah. There's like one viewer, I think. Yeah, you're the only one here. It's over. No, there's no point. I'm unless I have a billion viewers, I don't care to raid. You know, I sometimes I go into a stream and someone that they're focusing on some game and then they get big raid alert, incoming raid, one viewer, and it's like I feel like the stream was like, this isn't a raid. It's gotta be like at least like 5 viewers. That's like my number. It's gonna be like 5 viewers at least. Or it's gonna be like a ratio. You gotta have like a ratio of who you like. If you raid Iron Mouse with 5 viewers, that doesn't matter. But if you raid someone with 3 viewers with 5 viewers, it's like what? I don't know. All right. Leaving. I still don't have an outro screen. One of these days I'll get an outro screen.